Welcome to Conspiracies Condensed. In this episode, we take a closer look at Project Mockingbird, a Cold War operation that quietly reshaped the media landscape and influenced how the world received its news. Let's uncover how truth, trust, and power became tangled in the headlines. Truth isn't hidden, it's redacted. Project Mockingbird. Whispers in the newsroom. In the tense early days of the Cold War, information became a weapon. Within the polished walls of Washington's media giants, a quiet recruitment was underway. Journalists, editors, and foreign correspondents were approached by men with perfect smiles and federal credentials. They promised access, protection, and patriotism. But behind the polite conversations lay something darker. Operation Mockingbird, a covert effort by the CIA to steer public opinion and control narratives at home and abroad. Typewriters clacked, headlines shifted, and entire nations began to see the world through a carefully managed lens. The free press, once democracy's watchdog, was quietly being trained to fetch. The seeds of control. The Cold War wasn't fought only in jungles or boardrooms. It thrived in headlines and radio waves. In 1948, the newly formed CIA recognized the power of the media to shape perception faster than any bullet or bomb. So they planted seeds, funding friendly journalists, feeding them classified tips and guiding stories that echoed Washington's stance. At first, it was about combating Soviet propaganda, but as influence grew, so did ambition. Soon, Mockingbird became less about defense and more about domestic persuasion. Television anchors repeated approved phrases. Magazines framed dissent as disloyalty. The American mind was becoming a battlefield, and few realized the enemy spoke in familiar voices. The puppeteers behind the press. At the heart of Project Mockingbird were names whispered through the intelligence corridors. Frank Wisner, the mighty Wurlitzer conductor, and Cord Meyer, the quiet strategist who tuned the notes. They built an orchestra of influence, enlisting reporters from Time, Life, the New York Times, and beyond. Over 400 journalists secretly drew paychecks or favors from the CIA. Some justified it as patriotism. Others saw the truth but kept typing anyway. In private memos, the agency referred to its partners as assets. In public, they called them the free press. Each published line became another string pulled by invisible hands. A symphony of subtle persuasion. Manufacturing consent. By the mid-1950s, the CIA's media web stretched across continents. Foreign correspondents carried agency briefcases, while editorials shaped national opinion back home. Hollywood wasn't immune. Scripts were reviewed, endings softened, and heroes rewritten to fit the narrative. When foreign governments fell or revolutions erupted, Mockingbird's echo shaped how Americans interpreted good guys and bad guys. Disagreement was un-American, skepticism suspicious. The news no longer reflected reality, it manufactured it. And as one whistleblower later admitted, the truth was not suppressed, it was replaced. The exposure. By the 1970s, the illusion began to crack. Congressional hearings, the Church Committee, and a flood of whistleblowers dragged Mockingbird's secrets into the light. Names were redacted, files destroyed, but enough evidence survived to reveal the scope of the operation. The CIA publicly denied controlling the media, but admitted to maintaining relationships with journalists. It was a clever half-truth. By then, those relationships had already reshaped decades of news. The exposure didn't end the practice. It simply pushed it deeper underground. The lesson was clear. Influence thrives best in the shadows. The fallout. After Mockingbird's exposure, public trust in journalism began to fracture. The myth of impartial reporting shattered against the reality of hidden handlers and political scripts. Some journalists confessed, others vanished from bylines overnight. Congress promised oversight reforms, but the machinery of influence had already evolved. Intelligence agencies learned a valuable lesson. True control didn't require owning the press. It only required feeding it. A single phrase repeated by enough voices could still steer the masses. Mockingbird may have been clipped, but its song never truly stopped. The modern echo. Fast forward to the digital age. Algorithms replaced editors, and screens became our new printing presses. Yet the tune feels familiar. Sponsored narratives, coordinated talking points, and anonymous sources now echo Mockingbird's refrain in higher fidelity. The platforms changed, but the psychology stayed the same. Control the feed, control the thought. The difference? Today we volunteer our data and attention willingly. Mockingbird's invisible strings have evolved into glowing touchscreens, and the audience is still hypnotized by the chorus. The final reflection. Project Mockingbird may have been born in the Cold War, but its legacy hums beneath modern headlines. It asks us to question not just who writes the news, but why it's written. Every broadcast, every post, every fact check can trace its lineage back to those early experiments in narrative control. As the camera pans back on history's grand stage, one truth remains. Propaganda does not need to silence the truth when it can simply outshine it. And so the Mockingbird still sings, softly, sweetly, and unseen. Thanks for watching Conspiracies Condensed. If you found this episode interesting, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden chapters of history. Until next time, stay curious, stay questioning, and take care.